The air inside the courtroom was stifling, not from heat, but from anticipation. The mahogany walls, polished to a gloss, seemed to tremble with the weight of history about to be made. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't matter. Every eye, judge, jury, and press, was fixated on the man walking to the witness stand. Justin Combs. His shoulders were squared, his eyes clear, but behind the calm there was something else. Years of silence boiling under the surface, ready to erupt. Diddy sat just feet away, motionless in an expensive charcoal grey suit, but for the first time he looked small, vulnerable, like a man who feared what was about to be said more than any sentence that could follow. The court clerk swore Justin in. His voice didn't waver. "I do," he said, and those two words might as well have cracked the floor beneath Diddy's chair. What followed next was not a prepared statement. It wasn't a recitation crafted by lawyers or shielded behind vague phrases. It was the truth, raw, unfiltered, and terrifying. Justin inhaled deeply and began, "I stayed quiet because I thought loyalty meant silence, but silence has cost lives, and today I won't let it cost another." The room froze. Even the prosecutor looked stunned. Then came the revelation. One secret, one name. One night, everything changed. The courtroom shifted. Like a ripple through still water, the revelation left everyone unsettled. Diddy blinked. Once, then again, jaw tight, hands unmoving, but his eyes betrayed him. For the first time there was fear. Justin continued, eyes locked not on the judge, not on the jury, but on his father. "You always told me to protect the empire," he said, voice steady. "But I won't protect a lie anymore." He spoke of nights behind closed doors, of whispered threats and sudden disappearances, of people who had come too close to the truth and were suddenly gone, forgotten by the world, but not by him. The defense team scrambled, papers shuffled, objections were raised, but the damage was done. The judge overruled, the jury leaned in. Diddy's own blood was unmuzzled now, and no amount of legal shielding could contain the fallout. Behind Justin, a shadow moved. Kim Porter's sister, lips trembling, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She knew. She had always suspected, but hearing it aloud from the son he once paraded as a crown jewel struck deeper than she imagined. The courtroom became a confessional booth, and Justin its reluctant priest. Reporters outside fumbled to rewrite headlines. Phones buzzed, updates pushed, millions of screens lit up in homes across America. Justin Combs testifies against Diddy, shocking allegations surface. And yet inside it felt silent, the kind of silence that comes before a storm tears the roof off a house. And Diddy knew, whatever power he once held, money, fame, control, none of it would silence what came next. Diddy leaned back in his chair like a man cornered, not in a mansion, not behind velvet ropes, but here, beneath flickering fluorescent lights, surrounded by walls that heard the truth. Too many times he folded his arms, but it was not defiance, it was fear disguised as posture. Justin had returned to his seat, shoulders tense, gaze down. He looked like someone who had just emptied a secret he'd carried for far too long, the kind of secret that sits on your chest like a cinder block while cameras flash around you, pretending everything is fine. The prosecution seized the moment. "Let the record show," the attorney began, voice cutting through the tension, "that this wasn't just a family dispute. This is systemic. This is calculated. This is empire at the cost of humanity." They pulled up texts, photos, travel records, witness statements previously buried. The puzzle pieces that never fit now slid into place. Names once considered untouchable were now typed out in court exhibits, one by one. And as they called the next witness, a woman emerged, face masked with quiet grief. "State your name for the record," the court clerk asked. "My name is Kai," she whispered. "I worked at the house." Her voice cracked, "and I saw more than I should have." The room stilled. She spoke of back entrances, of late-night visits, of suitcases carried in and out. There was one girl, Kai said, blinking back tears. She was crying. She didn't want to stay. She paused. But Mr. Combs said, "Nobody leaves unless I say so." Someone in the gallery gasped. The judge banged the gavel. Order. But order had long since left this case. Outside, news vans jammed the block. Protesters held signs now, some for justice, some in disbelief. Celebrities who once called him brother were now silent, unfollowing, distancing. Brands froze endorsements, and all Diddy could do was stare ahead as the house of cards trembled. He had built a kingdom, a sound of fashion, of influence. But now, all of it was cracking beneath the weight of truth. A storm gathered in Diddy's eyes as the next witness approached. The courtroom dimmed under the tension, the air thick with anticipation. It was a man in his early 40s, sharply dressed but worn by time. He didn't look toward Diddy. He didn't need to. "My name is Reggie Lawson," he said, voice deep, steady. "I used to run security detail for Mr. Combs until I saw something I couldn't protect anymore." The silence was thunderous. He began recounting a night in 2016, an after-party at a compound in the hills, one of the exclusive ones with NDA signs at the door and phones locked away in velvet pouches. It started like any other night. Champagne, girls flown in from overseas, celebrities everywhere. But by 2 a.m., the tone changed. It always did after midnight. That's when the real power games began. He looked down, ashamed. There was a room we called the theater, but there weren't any movies playing. It was for control. He hesitated. "One time, I heard a girl screaming. I tried to go in. Mr. Combs blocked the door himself, told me if I wanted to keep my life the way it was, I'd turn around. I did. And I've hated myself ever since." Diddy didn't move. He didn't blink. His lawyer scribbled furiously, but it was like writing on a sinking ship. The prosecutor held up a photo, grainy, time-stamped, a hallway camera image, blurry but damning. Reggie pointed to the doorway. "That's the theater." The judge shifted. Even the defense couldn't speak. Then came the moment no one expected. Justin Combs stood up again, interrupting. "I need to say one more thing," he said, voice trembling. "I lied before, not about what happened, but about how long I knew." He looked directly at his father for the first time in years. "I knew what you were doing since I was 17, and I stayed quiet because I thought I owed you. But I don't owe you silence anymore. I owe those women the truth." Diddy's jaw tightened. For the first time, his lips parted, but no words came. Outside, the clouds rolled in over Los Angeles. A city that had once crowned him was now watching him unravel in real time. Twitter feeds exploded, headlines refreshed. Former collaborators deleted his name from projects, even as his music still played faintly in the background. But in that courtroom, the beat had stopped. And for Diddy, silence had never been more deafening. The judge called for a recess, but no one moved. The gavel struck once, twice, before the courtroom began to stir slowly, like a congregation leaving a funeral. Diddy didn't get up. His eyes were vacant now, not defiant, not broken, just empty, like something inside had detached. Justin walked past him without a glance, his jaw clenched, his steps uncertain. The media swarmed the hallway. "Justin, do you believe your father deserves prison time?" Someone shouted. He paused at the door, lowered his head, and said, "That's not for me to decide anymore." Back inside, Diddy was approached by his lead attorney, whispering urgently, "We need to discuss options, a plea deal, damage control. There's still time." But he didn't respond. He just stared forward, still processing the magnitude of his son's betrayal. No, not betrayal, reckoning. When court resumed, the prosecution called a new witness, and the room shifted once more. It was a woman named Kaya Reynolds. Her voice cracked before she even said her name. She'd been silent for over a decade, but when she opened her mouth, her truth hit harder than any headline. I was 19, she began. I thought I was going to a networking event. I thought it was my big break. Her voice wavered, but she continued. They locked the door behind me. There was music playing, but it wasn't loud enough to drown anything out. And when I tried to leave, he laughed. The jury was still. Every breath in the room was held like glass. She described what happened in detail, not to shock, but to reclaim something that had been taken. She wasn't there to perform. She was there to testify, to confront the man who had turned so many dreams into nightmares. Diddy finally reacted. He rubbed his temples. He gritted his teeth. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath. His lawyer touched his arm. "You need to stay composed," she whispered. "The jury is watching." He looked toward them, those 12 strangers who now held his future in their hands, but their faces had hardened. The glitz was gone. The legend had cracked, and the truth, ugly, undeniable, was bleeding through every line of testimony. The prosecution rested. The judge turned to the defense. "Are you prepared to begin your case tomorrow?" There was a long pause. "Yes, Your Honor," Diddy's attorney replied. But in her eyes was something unspoken, uncertainty, even fear. She knew what was coming. She knew how brittle his empire had become. As the court adjourned, cameras flooded the sidewalks outside. Protesters chanted, reporters yelled. Former fans held up signs. "Believe survivors. He was never a hero. No more silence." Inside the black SUV that whisked Diddy away, the silence was colder than the air conditioning. His security sat stone-faced. His phone buzzed and buzzed and buzzed. Calls from sponsors, executives, damage control teams, but he didn't pick up. He stared out the window as LA blurred by. His city, once a playground, now a courtroom with no exits. The man who built an empire on noise was now being buried by the echoes of the truth. By the next morning, the court steps were a battlefield of sound. Helicopters hovered. Pundits lined up with microphones. Onlookers crowded the barricades, some still in disbelief, others desperate to see justice or scandal or both. But inside the courtroom, the temperature was different. Cooler, tighter, like all the air had been measured in ounces. Diddy walked in wearing the same gray suit, but now it looked heavier on him, as if the weight of the past 20 years had finally woven itself into the seams. Justin was already seated, eyes forward, not once glancing toward his father. The divide between them was no longer emotional. It was spatial, moral, legal. The defense began. First came the calculated opening statement. His attorney stood tall, her tone sharp, deliberate. "My client is not the man painted by the prosecution," she said. "He is a music mogul, a philanthropist, a father." She gestured toward Diddy. "And while the allegations you've heard are serious, they are also stories, unverified, decades old, designed to shock, not prove." The jury blinked, but no one nodded. Then came character witnesses, a former producer, a label executive, a retired bodyguard. Each described Diddy's work ethic, his vision, his generosity. "He made stars," one said. "He gave kids from the block a future." But their words, once golden, now sounded rehearsed, detached, like eulogies at a funeral where no one quite believes the man deserved flowers. Then, in a move no one expected, the defense called Diddy himself to the stand. The courtroom stilled. Cameras clicked. Even the stenographer paused for a moment, pen hovering in mid-air. He was sworn in. "Do you understand the charges against you?" his lawyer asked gently. "Yes. And how do you respond to the allegations?" Diddy took a deep breath, leaned toward the microphone. "I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I've never hurt anyone intentionally." He looked toward the jury. "What's happening here? It's not the full picture. It's fragments, twisted, taken out of time and truth." The cross-examination, however, shattered that controlled rhythm. The prosecutor approached, slow and steady. "Mr. Combs, You say you never hurt anyone intentionally, but do you recall hosting a party in 2006 where witnesses say the doors were locked from the inside? I don't recall that detail. You don't recall. Do you recall Kia Reynolds being brought into a private room and allegedly assaulted after being given a drink you provided? His lips pressed into a line. That's not how I remember it. Did you ever ask her consent? Silence. The prosecutor stepped closer. Mr. Combs, multiple victims have testified under oath. Are you saying they all conspired against you, that your own son invented stories of drugs, coercion, threats? I'm saying I'm not the monster they're describing. Not a monster, she echoed. But did you act like one? Even once? He blinked. Once, twice. I don't know. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge tapped his gavel. The prosecutor leaned in for the final cut. That, Mr. Combs, might be the most honest thing you've said so far. Court recessed early that day. The damage had been done. Outside, the world reacted instantly. News sites flashed with breaking headlines. Diddy on the stand? I don't know. Twitter exploded. Videos of Kia's testimony racked up millions of views. Justin trended for hours. Praised, pitied, analyzed. At home, Diddy sat in his high-rise, alone. No entourage, no music, just the glow of the city he once ruled and the ticking clock towards sentencing. The silence was no longer a choice. It was the verdict creeping in. Sentencing day arrived with a grim punctuality. The city pulsed beneath storm clouds that hadn't broken yet. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was thick, almost ceremonial. No one whispered anymore. No one smiled. It was the kind of silence that waits for a name to be carved into stone. Diddy walked in alone this time, no entourage, no handlers, just him and the echo of 1,000 decisions that had finally found their reckoning. He wore a black suit perfectly tailored, but it looked more like armor than attire. Even the reporters stopped yelling. The courtroom didn't feel like a stage now. It felt like a tomb. Justin was seated already, same seat, same posture, rigid, distant, unforgiving. The prosecution team looked composed, but beneath their stillness, there was tension. Not triumph, something colder. They weren't here for victory. They were here for closure. The judge entered. Gavel dropped. The words began. In the case of the United States versus Sean Combs, having been found guilty by a jury of his peers on multiple counts of criminal conspiracy, sexual misconduct, narcotics distribution, and obstruction of justice, this court now delivers its sentence. Diddy's face didn't move, but his hands gripped the edges of the table. You have used your wealth, influence, and public stature not to uplift, but to dominate, intimidate, and dismantle the lives of those around you. This court does not disregard your contributions to music, to culture, but we are not here to sentence a career. We are here to sentence a man. A pause. Then the words that would haunt headlines. Sean Combs is hereby sentenced to 47 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. For the first 32, this court further recommends the immediate commencement of sentence at a federal maximum security facility. Court is adjourned. Gasps, cries. Somewhere, a phone clattered to the floor. Diddy stood frozen. The weight of the number hit him like gravity itself. The guards approached slowly, and for the first time in decades, the man who had been untouchable, who shaped pop culture with a whisper, was in chains. His eyes flicked toward Justin. His son didn't flinch, just looked back as if to say, "This is the price." Outside the courtroom, chaos. Protesters shouted. Fans wept. Victims embraced. Some reporters cried. Some just stared. It wasn't joy or vengeance. It was awe. That someone so massive, so woven into the American myth of power, could fall this far. Cameras caught it all, the cuffs, the stare, the silent walk down the corridor. No words were spoken. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He just walked into history not as an icon, but as a warning. By nightfall, the skyline of New York shimmered like nothing had happened, but everyone knew it had. In the industry, a cold recalibration began. Executives quietly retracted partnerships. Music platforms updated contracts. Former collaborators distanced themselves. Some posted vague statements. Others disappeared from social media altogether. Meanwhile, Kia Reynolds sat at home watching it all play out in real time. A tear rolled down her cheek, not of joy, not relief, but finality. The chapter she thought would never close had finally slammed shut. And across the city, a new conversation was beginning about power, fame, silence, and the cost of believing in idols that were always built on bones.